Hi, chickens. I hope you had a lovely Monday. I've been getting some emails asking for clarification on what's going on in the novel, so I thought I would just read you a summary. Moving on from here, I guess, I still need to read to you from the novel because it's important to honor the author's writing style. But maybe after every section, I'll just read you a little summary to remind you of the parts that are important because I've noticed that in a lot of your your reading comprehension questions with the multiple choice, it feels like some of you are just guessing, and I don't know, that's because you're not like listening to my whole 20 minutes. Come on, guys, it's only 20 minutes. Or you're just missing some things. So I'm just gonna go over so far what we've covered so that it sticks in your head, okay? So, the reason why this book is so popular is because it's about a protagonist, right, the hero, who has to learn lessons about fulfilling his personal legend. So, the whole reason why I've chosen for you guys to do a personal quest project is so that you can apply the lessons that Santiago is learning about finding his personal legend so that you can manifest, so that your own dreams can manifest. So, whatever it is, your dream matters, okay? And that's what The Alchemist is all about. It's about tuning out the pressures of the world to focus on what really matters to you, okay? So, this is what happens so far, right? And we've read through 3 parts. So, 1, 2, and 3. So, little shepherd boy Santiago is headed to a town where he had met a beautiful girl the year before, and he's excited about seeing her again. And while he was camping out in an abandoned church with his sheep, Santiago has a recurring dream. He explains it to a gypsy woman who tells him that he must go to the pyramids in Egypt to find a hidden treasure. Then he runs into a mysterious old man called Melchizedek, who tells him that everyone has a personal legend they must follow, and he must listen to omens in order to seek his treasure. He also gives him 2 stones, Urim and Thummim, that will help him know what to do when he can't seem to find the answers. Santiago tells his sheep and heads to Tangier. Remember, we talked about it. The novel takes place in a bunch of different places. So now he moves from Andalusia to Tangier, where he is promptly robbed of all his money. Remember the kid that pretends to help him out? Undeterred, he gets a job selling glass, coming up with the flashy market ideas that bring in all sorts of business to the crystal merchant. And once he's saved up enough money to cross the Sahara Desert and get to the pyramids, he meets up with a caravan about to cross the desert on camels. And then what we're going to read next is, lucky for Santiago, an Englishman in the group is headed to the Al Fayoum oasis to meet an alchemist. And we know what alchemy is, right? So the alchemist is the person that turns the metal into gold, who will teach the Englishman how to turn any metal into gold. Okay, so that's the quick summary. Now I'm going to go into a more detailed summary. So, Santiago falls asleep with his sheep in an abandoned church. That's important. He wakes up from a dream that he had a week ago, a week before. He's excited about the village he'll arrive in 4 days because he met a pretty girl there. He'd been at the girl's dad's shop selling wood, and he sat down to read while he waited for the boss of the shop. The girl asked him about what he was reading, and they hit it off, talking for hours. And then ever since he had met her, Santiago became obsessed with her, often as, teenagers are when they are in love. So in the town of Tarifa, Spain, he meets an old woman who says that she'll interpret his dream, and then he dreamed that she's watching a child. He dreamed that he is watching a child playing with his sheep, and then the child takes Santiago's hand and transports him to the pyramids, and then the child tells Santiago that if he comes to the pyramids, he'll find a hidden treasure. So, then the gypsy woman makes Santiago promise to give her 1/10 of his treasure if she interprets the dream. And then her interpretation is obvious that he should go to the pyramids in Egypt to find a treasure there. So, Santiago's annoyed by this, and he decides to go sit in the plaza and read a book, and he's finding it really hard to read the book. It's probably like a really difficult Russian Dostoevsky book. And an old man shows up and sits next to Santiago, striking up irritating conversation and interrupting his reading. And then when he sees Santiago's book, the old man says that it's a boring book because it tells the world's greatest lie, which is that fate rules and that people can't choose their destiny. Most of you got that one, right? In the little, the part 1, part 2, part 3 questions. So the nosy old man tells Santiago he's Melchizedek, the king of Salem, and then he surprises him by saying that if he gives him 1/10 of the sheep, he'll tell him how to find the treasure. So that was kind of strange because, Santiago didn't even ask him. To convince Santiago that he's not a con artist, right, someone who tells lies, Melchizedek writes down Santiago's life story in the sand. Okay, so now this man is kind of magical. So Melchizedek tells Santiago about how everyone has a personal legend, which is a life's dream or purpose, right? What is your dream? What is your purpose? And that as they get older, they start to think that it's an impossible thing to achieve. So that was some of your questions on the most recent, I'll just say quiz. It's not a quiz, but so, it asked you from when are you introduced to your personal legend. Well, it's childhood. You have a dream, and then as you get older, you forget about it. So according to Melchizedek, the soul of the world is happy when the people who live in it are happy. So the universe works towards everyone meeting their goals. Most of you got that right in the fill in the blank, right? Like when you're on the path to fulfill your personal legend, the whole world is working with you. Melchizedek also says that Santiago is about to give up on his personal legend, which is to go after the pyramid treasure, and that Melchizedek is there to give him the little extra push to keep going. So they make a date to meet at the same time the next day for the exchange of information for the sheep. The next day, as planned, Santiago brings 6 sheep to the old man and tells him that he sold the rest of his flock to a friend to get money for his journey. The old man tells Santiago that the treasure is indeed in Egypt, near the pyramids. Melchizedek gives Santiago a couple of stones. Okay, we know about these stones, Urim and Thummim. One is white, one is black, yin and yang. One means yes, the other means no. And they're there for when Santiago needs to make tough decisions, much like the coin in Slumdog. Then Melchizedek's best advice for Santiago is to follow the omens and to follow the personal legend. So finally he tells Santiago a story about a boy who went to visit the wisest man in the world. The wise man told the boy to walk around the mansion he lived in with a teaspoonful of oil without spilling a single drop. When he finished, the wise man asked him what he had seen, but he couldn't tell him anything because he'd been so focused on not spilling the oil. So then the wise man told this boy to go again, and this time pay attention to the art and architecture. So then this boy does it, but when he finishes, he finds out that he spilled the oil. So the wisdom of the wise man is to see the marvels of the world and never forget the drops of oil on the spoon. And Melchizedek then watches Santiago's little ship across the strait and knows that he'll never see him again. Okay, then in Tangier, Santiago sits in a bar and watches the Muslims around him pray. He doesn't speak Arabic, so he can't really talk to anyone. Then someone approaches him speaking Spanish, and Santiago tells the young Moroccan boy about his quest to get to the pyramids. The boy conveniently offers to be Santiago's guide. Santiago shows him his money, and it seems to be enough. The owner of the bar comes over and gets mad, speaking Arabic, so the boys leave. The two go to buy some camels so they can leave for the pyramids the next day, and they end up in a market. Santiago sees a beautiful sword there. He gets distracted by the sword, and then he realizes that his friend, not actually a friend, is gone with his money, and Santiago begins to cry. Santiago decides to consult the special fortune-telling stones, Urim and Tumim, asking them whether the old man's blessing is still with him. And they say yes. And then he asks whether he'll find his treasure. And they both fall through a hole in the pouch. So Santiago cleverly takes this to mean that he should make his own decisions. And then he feels a bit better about his situation now. He's like taking ownership of what's happened to him. He decides to take it as an adventurer looking for treasure. And instead of heading back to Spain with his tail between his legs, he's going to continue on his journey. Someone wakes up Santiago the next morning in the middle of the marketplace, and he takes a walk around. He helps one candy seller set up his stall and gets a sweet in return. Santiago speaks Spanish, and the candy man speaks Arabic, but they understand each other perfectly. Santiago realizes that there is a language that doesn't use words, right? The language of God. And that if he can understand it, he'll understand the world. A crystal merchant wakes up in Tangier and gets ready to start working in his failing glassware shop. Santiago walks by and offers to clean the glass in the window so the people passing by will want to buy them. And then Santiago asks the crystal merchant for food in repayment. The old man doesn't answer, but Santiago cleans the glass anyway. And then when he does ask for food, the crystal merchant takes him out to eat lunch. And, the crystal merchant says, it's part of my religion to feed you anyway, so you didn't have to do all that work. And they decide that Santiago will stay on to work in the shop officially because he'll have to work for at least a year to get the money back to Egypt. Santiago decides to work just long enough for the money to buy sheep and head back to Spain. And he works for the crystal merchant for about a month, and it's not exactly his dream job, but he's making enough money to save up for his sheep. He suggests building an outdoor display case to attract more customers, and then at first the crystal merchant isn't buying it. So then Santiago changes his tactics and says that they should take advantage of his beginner's luck. Remember the law of favorability, the beginner's luck, so he can achieve his personal legend. The merchant is into what Santiago is saying and asks him why he wants to get to the pyramids. So Santiago doesn't want to tell the merchant about the treasure because he has now decided to give up on it. But a couple of days later, the merchant tells Santiago that his life dream was to make a pilgrimage to Mecca in accordance with the Muslim law. Except he never got to Mecca because he always wanted something to look forward to. That was one of your questions. So the merchant says that he never got to fulfill his dream because he always wanted it to just be there as part of something he could hope for. Okay. All right. So then the merchant says that he and Santiago are different because Santiago actually wants to realize his dreams. So the merchant finally gives in. Santiago is allowed to build the display case, and the plan works, and they sell glass. And they make money. So then Santiago gets the idea that they should then sell tea out of glasses. A lot of you got that right. And then the merchant is hesitant about that because he feels like he would have to change his way of life. And then because it turns out that having met Santiago, the merchant had to look at his life more philosophically, and he didn't like what he saw because he realizes that he's not reaching his fullest potential, and he's not keeping his options open, and he doesn't even want to. He doesn't have the desire to. Sometimes when you're stuck in your ways, you're just accepting things as they are, and you're not pushing yourself to live a more fulfilling life. So then the two smoke together, and the merchant says maktub, which means it is written in Arabic. So it means, okay, let's do let's do your tea, your ideas for the tea. So then Santiago and the merchant are selling both tea and glass, and the merchant has to expand and hire more employees. And almost a year after arriving in Africa, Santiago saved enough to get back to Spain and buy double the sheep he'd had the year before. He tells the merchant that he's leaving and he gets his blessing, but the merchant says that even though he has enough money to get to Mecca, he won't go, and he knows that Santiago won't buy his sheep. As Santiago packs up his things, Yorim and Tumim fall out of his pouch, and he realizes he hasn't even thought about the old king in a year, and he leaves without saying goodbye because he doesn't want to cry. So cute. But then he realizes he can always go back to being a shepherd, but he has to keep chasing after his dream to learn new things. A lot of you guys got that one right. And so then he decides to see how much it would cost to get to the pyramids. And then the next part, we meet the Englishman, okay? So, yeah, hopefully you all understand everything that's going on now, and I'll see you tomorrow.